Oh, what's going on? I am an intelligent human being. I am very smart and very big and masculine and strong. Thus, it's only fitting that I am the only one capable of critiquing exercise, sports, and scientist Dr. Mike Israetel. Let us begin. The sword of truth shall unveil any lies that he might speak.
Hey folks, hypertrophy myth is that you must train to failure in order to grow your best, and to grow the most muscles and experience the most happiness.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the myth. Let's talk about some of the good points it kind of alludes to, the bad stuff. So, people will say that if you're not going to failure, you're leaving growth in the tank. Why leave growth in the tank? People say that failure training is key, especially in advanced lifters.
Oh, yeah.
Beginners, they can get away with whatever. You gotta go to failure for advanced, okay? Within the first several weeks of training, so that he doesn't spend time, swimming around a little mini duck pond where he could be in the ocean catching these failure growth waves or whatever.
So, I agree with a lot of that. Failure is very convenient. It's a solid statistic. It's a mark of effort. You reach it and you're like, okay, I know where I am. It's a solid measurement. Unless you're a pussy. In which case you just like, hey, fail. I failed. No, you didn't. So I agree with most of that, but here's the other thing. Failure makes things simple. You just train until you can't, and you've won. Maybe there's a little nitpickiness of things, but for the most part, that is correct.
Natties need to do reps in reserve and Roman style gladiator weapons, and just go to town. Another one of those good fights.
I am a gladiator.
Like a Roman Cosmodrome thing. Scott, what else we got?
Pineapple on pizza versus no pineapple.
Pineapple on pizza versus everyone else? You get the idea.
I will murder people who put pineapple on their pizza. I can eat it, but that's because I'm fat. I don't enjoy it.
Dinosaur versus mechanical spider from Wild Wild West. All right, fuck this video. 1v1. All right. So anyway, the myth is like people should be trained to failure because reasons. At the very end of the mesocycle, in the last training week, as you've made training harder and harder, right before the deload, you might be interested in going really all the way to failure.
So, I don't train in mesocycles. I just go until it hurts. And then when I can no longer go and no longer reach pain, I just don't reach pain until eventually I can reach pain again. It's simple life for MeatHead today. Oh, honoring Russian comrade, Dr. Mike Israetel. Ah, delightful, yes. I agree with this. Yeah.
Hey, got a great stimulus. It's okay about the fatigue because we get to rest the week after. And at the same time, you are going to be able to test the waters. And if you got sets of 10, 10, 10, 10, and you thought they were 2 or 1 RIR, and then you go to failure and you get a set of 16, yeah, sure, I was 7 reps away from failure. I've been lying to myself. That's why I've been growing like shit. So then later, the most important thing you can do with beginners, short of training them a little bit in a tough way to get them gains, is to help them learn proper lifting technique. And proper lifting technique cannot be learned in an environment in which you're pushing them really close to failure, because especially with beginners in whom technique is not ingrained yet, their technique will break down the closer they get to failure. So if you stop them at 3 or 4 reps in reserve before they start to be all wobbly, or just as they're starting to get wobbly, you're good to go. They're learning great technique and getting great gains. If you insist that they go to failure.
So, I think that beginners should go to failure, so that way they can learn early on what true freaking effort is, so they can practice pushing themselves. I think that when you're a beginner, you're usually so weak that any bad form that you have is going to be unimportant unless you're just genuinely stupid and you do your shoulder press like this, and you just hope that your arm doesn't rotate in the not good direction. No, but I don't think that it's as important for beginners to worry about the reps in reserve or anything like that, because they don't know how hard they're training. They don't know if they're training super hard or not hard at all. If the beginners are going to be getting similar gains anyway, why not have them push close to failure? Because, you know, unless you are a pussy, training close to failure is fun. Training until you can't push anymore is a fun way to go, and I think that'll keep more people in the gym. We shall see.
All the time, the last couple reps of bench press turn into like the bar goes like this and their one leg comes up when they do this shit, struggling for survival. They hit the fucking rack, bounces off, hit their dick, bounces off. That's not good training, and it sets up really poor habits, and it'll get them hurt eventually when they get strong enough. Is that the body of literature as a whole? In reality, you're saying, but hold on, everyone's not going close to failure as they think. Maybe the 2 RIR people are really at 5 RIR, and the 0 RIR people at really 2 RIR. Fine. But the 5 RIR motherfuckers are still getting better gains, bro. Explain that shit. So if you're saying failure really is underrated and the studies don't pick it up, how the fuck? If it was underrated, then the failure people would for sure grow way more than the fucking RIR.
I can't come up with a creative rebuttal. Unfortunately, it is futile. I cannot win to his Shrek-like boldness and his handsome gargantuan girthness. Yes.
Our people, holy shit, there is just not really any compelling evidence that training to failure is remotely needed in most cases. Close to failure is a great idea. At failure, if you're really insistent that going to failure is a must, you are saying a dogmatic thing that borders on a religious thing. All those cool accents and telling you you're a pussy, amazing. I love it. I got all the time in the world for that shit. The SFR, stimulus to fatigue ratio, of failure training sucks. The raw stimulus magnitude of going to failure is the highest it could be. The raw amount of growth you get in one session going to failure versus not failure, you get more growth, for sure. The problem is you get so much fatigue generated from going to failure rather than just a little bit before failure. It's way more fatigue than you get stimulus. So you may get 15% more growth, but 2 times the amount of fatigue. That fatigue spills over into the next workout, adds up even more, into the next week, adds up even more, into the next several weeks, adds up even more, and you end up having shitty quality training and sort of just fall apart. It is not sustainable because its stimulus to fatigue ratio is not that good.
There we go. Oh, my sword of truth is faulty. So, I train to failure like every goddamn time. I'm illiterate and I can't count, so I can't expect to make gains while not training to failure. So, that fatigue spillover nonsense bullshittery doesn't really apply to me. Because you know what I just do? I just push harder. And then, when my RPE 10 looks like a 25-pound dumbbell press for like 3 because I'm so goddamn emaciated mentally and tired, it's just fine. You know what? That's just what I was capable of the whole time. The rest was all just a delusion caused by, you know, when people are in the desert for a long time and they have the like mirage, delirium, whatever that is called. That's what that's called. So he's totally wrong here. You can train to failure every single day of the week, every single set, and you can still have like that 52 sets of quads, and you're still going to be absolutely fine, man.
And this to people who are like more jacked, like us, like me, like you. Our people are really so cool at growth, for sure. It is not sustainable because its stimulus to fatigue ratio is not that good. That's not ideal. If, on the other hand, your training volume is really low, like you're capable of doing 10 sets at 2 RIR, but you normally just train with 5 sets because you're like a HIIT person, high intensity training person, yes, going to failure boosts your hypertrophy closer to that 10 RIR or 10 sets at 2 RIR situation, and then it actually does make sense for you to go really close to failure. You could be in a situation in which you're just too busy. You have a lot on your plate. You can only train a few times a week for 45 minutes at a time. You can only do a few sets per muscle group. Then yes, grind everything to fucking failure and maybe even some forced reps, because you don't have to worry about the fatigue. You don't train enough for cumulative fatigue to really be a huge factor, and you need as big of a stimulus from every set as possible. Yes, that is true. That is a thing.
Hand of truth. So in conclusion, train to failure or you're a bitch. Train to failure or you're just so not advanced that you physically cannot lift the dumbbells enough to train to failure. You are incapable of failure. Does that mean you're a success? Absolutely. If you're not failing, you're succeeding. But you're failing in getting the gains. So where does that leave you? What do you do? Growth hormone. You have a great day.